Hi, and welcome to video number 11 of the Hibernate tutorial video series by Lokam Chanakya. In the previous tutorial, we talked about how to create the main class, which we did over here. We created a small while loop and showed how the user can insert and delete, or call the insert and delete, record and update methods. And we also created the method stubs for the insert, retrieve, update, and delete methods as well, giving them the parameters that come in. So now we're going to, in each of the following videos, we're going to see how we can actually use this method and insert into the database. So we'll start off with insert record in this particular tutorial. The first step would be to take the string name and string email and put it into an object of type persistence class. So for that, let's create a new persistence object. But before we do that, we're also going to create a try catch statement so that we catch any errors that happen in this method and print out the stack trace so that we know what's going on. So now that we have that here, we'll create a new persistence class object and call it p1 equals new persistence class. Now that's been created, we take the p1.setName and we'll give the parameter as name, and we'll also set the email, set email. Now that those two are set, we have the persistence object, and now we have to take this persistence object, use the configurations that we have, and to use the configurations we have to call the getConfig method that's given to us right over here so that we initialize all the configuration objects that we have. So to do that, let's go over here and call the getConfig method. And since it's in the same class, we can call it directly. So once we call the getConfig method, we can basically use the session, factory, and config objects that we initialized up there. So the first step that we have to do is we have to start off a transaction. So we'll take our transaction object that we created over here and initialize it using the session object, which is tx equal to session.begin transaction. And once we do that, we now have our transaction object as well to use. And the transaction object is usually used to commit and roll back on whatever operations are taking place on the database. So if something goes wrong between a transaction, we do not commit any other functions that have taken place. And if you don't use the commit function, then any changes that happen, even if they're successful, they'll all be rolled back. So the next step is we want to store this particular patient object into the database. You remember in the database we had an ID as well, but the advantage with that is we gave an @generated value annotation to the ID in the persistence class, which means that it'll be auto-incremented as defined in the database, so the ID need not be given to it. So in order to see if the function has properly worked or not, we take our integer called int result, and now we'll use the session object, and there's a function called save, which means that we're now saving the POJO object, that is the persistence class object p1, to the database, and how the persistence object is mapped to the database is defined using the annotations, and which database we have to configure to and which database we have to connect to is defined using the XML hibernate.cfg.xml file. So the next step, we have to cast this to an integer. And many people think that, like in JDBC, the value returned by sesion.save is actually a 0 for failure or 1 for a success, but that is not true. The session.save basically returns the primary key of the table or the primary key of the record that's being inserted, and in our case the primary key is an integer, so it'll return an integer. If the primary key is a string or the primary key is a float, it'll return the respective value. So if we say that the name is a primary key, then the session.save will actually return a string instead of an integer. So now we can actually print it out here saying that system.out.println record has been inserted with ID equal to, and let's print out the ID, which is basically result. So once that is done, we can remove the system.out.println over here that we put, or we can print it as well if we want to. So instead, let's take all this and take it up over here, print it over here, let's say inserting record with the following values. And it's using the name and email, which are being sent in as a string over here, and it'll be putting it into the persistence object, and that persistence object is being stored over here. The next step that we have to do is we also have to commit the transaction using the tx.commit method, which actually commits all operations that have taken place on the database. Now, to actually use this, let's go back to our main class, and since we have only case 1 set up right now, we'll use the case 1 and see what's happening on the database side. So I'll just increase the console so that you guys can see the result. Right click on main class.java, run as Java application. Now you can see we have a menu. Let's take
It's
1.
8 o'clock.
And now it's asking for the name. So let's give Chanakya as the name. And then the email, selokum2@gmail.com in case you guys want to contact me. And then record has been inserted. There you go. Inserting record with the following values: name Chanakya, email selokum2@gmail.com, and it's asking, and record has been inserted with ID 2. Don't worry about these. These are log4j warnings. They're in no way a problem for us. Let's click on 0 since we don't want to continue. And since that is done, now we can actually go over to Safari, open up localhost /php myadmin to check whether the values have been stored or not. Let's go over to our database, which is DemoDB, and you can see we have 2 rows right now. One of the rows must have been inserted before, and you can see there we go, 2 Chanakya and selokum2@gmail.com. This was inserted right now, and you can see over here in Eclipse the record ID that was written was 2. So in case you want to check out how the ID is being generated dynamically, you can see that we'll run the main class again, run as Java application, and we'll enter 1, and we'll enter a different name, name 1, email 1, and you can see there you go, the ID is 3 this time. And if we do it again, name 2, email 2, you can see that the ID is 4 this time, and we'll click on 0 to end off this. Now that that's ended, we'll go back to Safari, and you can see now if you click on browse again, you can see that there's 4 values actually stored in the database. That's how you use the sesion.save method to insert values into the database using Hibernate. In the next tutorials, we'll be looking at the other CRUD operations and how they'll be used. Thank you for watching our videos. Please subscribe to our channel and like our videos as well. Thank you.